Last week we were actually inquiring into this prayer, which comes from the Chandogya Upanishad, if you didn't know. The Chandogya Upanishad is one of the biggest Upanishads that we have, and it's divided into 3 sections. Chapter 1 and 2 deals with all about the structure, the stress, and the rhythm of linguistics, that is of language, especially of our vak, that is speech. Section 2 of the book consists of chapter 3 to 5, which is all about mithya, that is all about how the universe is created, what are the constituents of the universe, what makes the universe, all about life, what's the purpose of life, how is life proceeded, what makes life up. And the last section, which is chapter 6 to 8, consists all about reality, that is discernment between the real and the unreal, or between satya and mithya. That is all about soul and reality. So, isn't that interesting if you inquire, why did we first do communication? Remember the 4 satyams, satyam vadam, rutam vadam, priyam vadam, and hitam vadam, which was about what? It was about how to communicate, which comes from the Chandogya Upanishad. So now we're starting to connect the dots that this course isn't just about the Bhagavad Gita, it also integrates the Upanishads by various forms, and when we do teach you the Upanishads, you will be known. So we're bringing it all together. Okay, so now that we have discussed the purpose, the highest purpose of a person's inquiry, when all is said and done, when we've gone through everything, we've pursued all there is to pursue, we have attained all there is to attain, we have married, we have divorced, we have got all the jobs, we have got all the money, we know what it's all about, and we are ready for the final. That is when Sarvam Brahmaha Upanishadam comes into our inquiry, which means that everything here is Brahman, and I am non-separate from it. I am that whole, and everything is, that is what everything is, that is that Tvamasi. Thou art. That's a Mahavakya coming straight from chapter 6 from Chandogya Upanishad. It's a great Mahavakya, and it summarizes the essence of Vedanta. That means that you are that. You are what? You are the whole. Okay. So, and then we moved on to Ma aham brahma nira kuryam. Ma aham brahma nira kuryam. And this talks about let me, as a honest seeker, as an honest aspirant of my journey of Sarvam Brahmaha, let me not, that is, reject. See how there's a little person? Let me not reject self-knowledge. Let me not reject Brahman. And we discussed why. One of the reasons we said is, if we know that I am the whole, then that means what? Nothing is missing. So therefore, what? Just like a Buddha, a fat Buddha that is what? Laughing, and he's got a full belly. You realize that? Well, why is that? And the answer was because he is full. Therefore, when you're full, you don't need anything. Because you're full. That means you're complete. That means nothing from the external can add anything onto me because I'm full. That means no desires are present. So that's what Sarvam Brahmaha means. That means I am full. But on the other hand, a worldly person is what? They're constantly empty. They want more. They're looking for experiences. They want to grab more, eat more, consume more sensual pleasure, more mind stimulation, more intellectual acquisition, more. So that means that is a worldly person who is not yet complete because they believe that the world, that is mithya, is real, therefore they're invested into what? Making the world work for them. But as you will soon see, as we get deeper into the Bhagavad Gita, you cannot make the world work for you ever, because, why? Whenever there is an upside, there is a seen or an unseen downside. You know that story? Or whenever I win, I lose, whether immediately or in one future point of time, or whether I lose, I actually win. If I have a divorce, I actually haven't really lost, because now I'm free to pursue something even more expensive. If I get married, I haven't actually even won, because how long is that going to last? There could be a divorce, there could be all sorts of trouble, there could be a restriction of what I really need to pursue. So there's always a up and down in mithya. And so as long as one remains in, that is, believing that the world is real, they will what? Try to make the world work for them. And until you realize that there is nothing you can ever do in this world to make it work for you, that's when you're ready for Vedanta. So the qualifications, once again, come down to this one simple point, and that is, are you tired of being a human being? Are you tired of the world? It's actually a genuine inquiry, because if we're not, that means that I'm still going to go running out there, and what? I'm still going to be pursuing a lot of great, variety of all sorts of foods and cuisines and knowledge and other friends and parties and women. It just doesn't ever end. So when you see that it's all fine, however, it has a limit, then you're ready to pursue sarvam brahmaha. Everything is Brahman, and I am not separate from that Brahman. And that's when we pursue this journey of enlightenment. Okay. So before we move on to the next line, is there any questions, comments, or opinions about sarvam brahmaha and maham brahma nirakuryam? Okay. So
I do have a question. So, what about the Buddha talks about the world's revolt and the world's sacrifice? So, there's a certain path that we do need to take to keep the world sustained.
Yes.
So, can't necessarily withdraw from those roles and responsibilities.
That's right. So we're not escaping the world. We're still fully... See, Vedanta doesn't tell us to shave our heads and put our orange robe and go to the monasteries or the ashrams or the temples and just contemplate on God. Vedanta says very clearly to be what? Fully dynamically involved in the world, working, having household responsibilities, having friends. It's all fine. But amidst that, as your number one priority, pursue Brahman, pursue self-knowledge. Yeah, so we're not discarding any of these worldly engagements. Okay. So, next line we have is Mama Brahma Nirakarot. Okay, so now when we remove the sandhi, actually there's no sandhi here. In the last line we said, may I, that is a spiritual seeker, not reject or push away self-knowledge, Brahman. But now here it's saying, may Brahman, may Ishvara, in this case Ishvara 1 and 2, Ishvara is the whole, may Ishvara not reject me. Now that's kind of weird, isn't it? Because if I'm also if everyone's part of the whole, how can a seeker be rejected by the whole? Well, it's very simple. Let's say, for example, I decide to come to the class or listen to the scriptures and listen to the shastras. And what usually can happen is I listen to a point or I read up to a point and then I think I got it. That is premature, it's called enlightenment sickness actually. It happens all the time. People get this gets self-knowledge, and then they walk out thinking, oh, it's all mithya, it's all an illusion, it's all a dream, and I'm the only one that's real here. It's very common. So this leads to an eventual error. It's called the leading error from the Panchadasi text. And we'll talk about what's the causes of this. But that means that if I choose not to be fully involved and stay or stick by this knowledge until it's fully comprehended, then there's a natural tendency to walk out with these shastras, with these verses, this knowledge, and misinterpret without knowing the world according to the new acquired knowledge. And that actually ends up doing much more damage than good. It happens all the time. I've been watching it for decades, where like Neo-Advaitas, they will get some knowledge from some guru, and then they will say, oh, it's all an illusion, you guys are not real, my wife's not real, my children are not real, my boss is not real, and then, I'm just real, me awareness, I'm real. But it doesn't work like that, because what do we say about Sarvam Brahmaha? Everything is the whole. That means, to your question, your name? Adrian. Oh, you got two Adrians. So that means that we cannot push anything away, right? Because everything is part of the whole. So in that case, the Adrian's answer would be, no, it doesn't make sense to acquire this knowledge and then what? Go out there and then just kind of stick in my little meditation corner and then discard the world as if it's just a dream. That doesn't work. What needs to be done is we need to understand this knowledge from the start all the way to the end, so there's not a single doubt. Otherwise, you actually end up causing more damage than good, and we get into a little tangents, those where we get in I know this, I'm smart, and we put on this show. It's called enlightenment sickness. And what it usually does, it kind of diminishes other people. It diminishes the world. And if everything is Brahman, if everything is the whole, what does that mean? And I'm not separate from the whole. That means what? I am diminishing myself. Yeah.
What's the test for moksha? So is it subjective or objective? In other words, someone can define themselves they've attained moksha, and someone can say no, they haven't, because their interpretation of the world is wrong. Is there a way of...
There is the whole shastras that we're going to go into, Bhagavad Gita, will have a huge checklist, and you'll see Arjuna is a very curious seeker, and he will ask Krishna, so how does a wise person, Jnani, how do they walk, talk, how do they conduct themselves? And so Krishna is going to give a checklist as to how does the enlightened one actually, what is their mindset? Because see, you cannot tell who knows and who doesn't with their behavior. Because their behavior is just their behavior. It's still a continuation from the past behavior. What determines is what they know. That is their knowledge. But you can never know what they know. In other words, you will never know who's enlightened or not. Only you can know for yourself. So the best that we can do is give you the checklist from the Shastras, from the Upanishads, and then you can verify that against your own mindset, your own way of looking at the world. For example, one of the common things to say is the wise person sees a cow poop or a crow poop no different than from a saint. The excreta of a crow is seen no different than a saint. Why is that? Well, we'll get into that, but you will see why. Okay, so therefore, here in this prayer, we're asking, may this whole not reject me by me being irresponsible and not completing my inquiry all the way to the end. Because if I do, then I'm going to walk out with a sense of lack of clarity, and I'll get into my own little tangent, and I'll cause trouble for other people and myself. And then it's very hard to restart our journey if we just discover that it's actually not it. I thought I got it, but I didn't. And so we get discouraged, and then it just takes so much time to restart all over again. Okay. So also, it's very common for modern teachers to also get into this trap, where the knowledge, they acquire this knowledge, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, the Panchadasi, Vivekachudamani, the Bhagavad Gita. And what happens is, now they know, like, wow, I know the ultimate reality. But what happens is, then what they begin teaching, and eventually the teacher becomes bigger than the knowledge. In other words, it becomes about the teacher. I can give you many examples of who they are, and there are many of them. One of them visiting Byron. I'm not going to mention names, but it happens all the time, where they will come in and it's just all about them. When we're saying Sarvam Brahmaha, that is, you are Brahman, no separate from me. That is, everything is what? Nothing is two here. There is no difference. So you can see how this prayer is important because it's letting both the student and the teacher know, let me not fall into this trap where the knowledge becomes, where I become bigger than the knowledge, right? So it's a very humbled approach towards the Upanishads. Okay. So therefore, let me make an effort to understand this fully. And the only way to understand it fully is by completing, that is, the program, by learning about self-inquiry, how to actually inquire. In fact, the classes themselves are a form of inquiry, because right now I'm speaking and you're listening and you're inquiring, how does this relate to you? You're inquiring, how can I put use of this, and where have I made a mistake in relation to what's being said? So the classes themselves are a form of inquiry. Okay. Now we go into anirakaranam astu anirakaranam me astu. So when we break down the sandhi in Sanskrit is when the long words, you'll notice these long words, that's because they're all joined together using a special process called sandhi. That's why it's very hard to learn Sanskrit, because we look at these like impossibly long words, but they're actually, if you take out the sandhi, you have, for example, in this case, anirakaranam astu, anirakaranam me astu. So that's the original line. Okay. So here we have another seeker who is rejecting self-knowledge, and there's a crossover, which means, once again, it's a reiteration of the previous two verses. May I not reject Brahman, and may I, both for me, and may this knowledge start to take hold. May this knowledge start to become clear. And just like with anything, the more we learn, the more we can learn. The more we understand this inquiry, the more we understand the Bhagavad Gita and self, knowledge of the self, the more you can understand what these verses are actually pointing to. Just like if you go to a class, you take a child, a 5-year-old child, and they don't know anything about mathematics, and we teach them mathematics, and then what? By the virtue of their knowledge of mathematics, in this case the self, they're now able to take that knowledge and inquire, create new formulas of their own. In other words, same thing with the Upanishads. By learning how to inquire, I can now start to properly inquire and therefore receive a much more accurate inquiry, a much more accurate answer to my inquiry. Okay, and of course, it's a reminder to investigate, because that's what this is really about. We're going to investigate deeper in the light of the Upanishads. Okay. Any questions, comments, or opinions about the previous two lines? Alrighty. Tadatmani nirate ya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi santu te mayi santu. Now once again, if we take out the sandhi, we get tat atmani nirate yaha upanishatsu dharmaha te mayi santu te mayi santu. So, what does this mean? Okay, we have tat, tat tvamasi, that. So, tat, etat is this, tat is that. Atmani, you heard of Atman, Atman, so this is a locative case. So, in Atman, nirate, in one who revels, yaha, what, Upanishatsu, what is contained in the Upanishads, dharmaha, that's a first person masculine plural, that's why it's a long A. If you have dharma, that's one dharma. Dharma means value. But if you have dharmaha, that's many values. And then we got te mayi santu. In me, let it be. So one easy way to interpret the Sanskrit verse is you just go to the end and you look at the verb. And then from the verb, you can infer what the actual statement is saying. So santu means let it be. Like a common phrase in Sanskrit is tathastu, like let it be. It's kind of like, okay, tathastu, let it be. So let in me be dharmaha, be the values contained in the Upanishads. But then what about this line? Let me, the one who revels in Atmani, in Brahman, in the knowledge of Brahman, let me have the knowledge or the values contained in the Upanishads required for their understanding. So I'm going to interpret that again. The whole line is saying, in me, the one who revels in the knowledge of Brahman, Atman is Brahman, let me have the values, dharmaha, contained in the Upanishads so that I may understand the Upanishads. So that means this is a qualifier. It's qualifying. Now the question comes, what values are required to understand the Upanishads? What do you need to have to actually understand these statements? And the answer is dharmaha. Now the question is, what dharmas, right? Now there are 4 distortions that every human being faces. No one's an exempt from this. And we all go through constantly fighting, that is constantly a tug of war between these 4 distortions. And we will now talk about what they are, because if these 4 distortions, dharmas, are not addressed, then the statements, Upanishadsu, will and cannot be understood. Okay. So that is, once again, let me understand the Upanishads and have these values so that the fruit of my self-inquiry may be what? Fruitful, and may I realize Sarvam Brahmaha. Okay. So the first one, the first distortion that we human beings faced, and this is irrespective of the culture, of the race, of gender, of what you know, what you don't know. It doesn't matter whether one's enlightened or not. It's irrelevant. All human beings face this problem. Okay, as long as there's a body. And the first problem is the problem with dharma, that is following dharma. Dharma means values. Okay. So now the question is, what kind of dharma are there? And we're going to talk about 3 main dharmas. The first one is called Samanya Dharma, and there's a little picture there. It implies what? It's universal. That means it's irrespective of creed, race, beliefs, gender. It's what? It's eternal. Okay? So Samanya Dharma means universal ethical values. So what does Samanya Dharma mean? Good. Okay. The next Dharma we have is Swadharma. Swadharma is your own private duties or responsibilities. Okay, so these are related to your life, to you as a person. So what is Swadharma?
Personal duties, responsibility.
Good. And the last Dharma is called loka-sangraha. So loka-sangraha is simply saying that Samanya Dharma and Swadharma are not enough. That means I can follow the universal values, I can still be good, and I can still do my duty, as Adrian said. But Upanishad says that is not enough if we wish to pursue Sarvam Brahmaha. So this means that loka-sangraha means going beyond, that is expanding and understanding my interconnectedness with everyone else. Okay, so now let's talk about each one. Okay, so we have Samanya Dharma. So once again, these are values that do not change over time. So that means they were as applicable to the Incas, the Aztecs, the Persians, the Egyptians, the Mayans, the Sumerians, the ancient Greek. They never were any different 10,000 years ago, nor will they be any different 10,000 years from now. they're exactly the same. In other words, Samanya Dharma is inbuilt into creation from the time of creation. And one of the primary dharmas of Samanya is ahimsa, that is non-injury. Okay, so that means what? We are all born with Samanya Dharma because I just said this is imbued in all creation. You don't have to be taught not to kill somebody. You don't have to be taught not to lie. You don't have to be taught not to cheat. You don't have to be taught not to hurt someone. We just know it. There is an inherent knowing. So that's what Samanya Dharma is. So now the question arises, if this is imbued in all creation, why then do we violate Samanya Dharma? Why do we still cheat, lie, manipulate, and try to get what? A favor for us at the expense of somebody else? Why do we do this? For example, why does a child, when they lie, they're like so transparent on it. They make a lie and they go, oh! Why do they do that? Because they know they inherently violated Samanya Dharma. They don't understand why they do it. They just do it. So that means that whenever a child hurts another, whether they bully someone in school, whether they lie to their mom, they lie to their dad, where they went out, they went partying, but they say, I was at my friend's house. Or they hurt somebody, they cheat, that is, they steal something from someone. Whether they are whether they're okay with it or not, it doesn't matter. They still, because this is imbued in creation, pay the price, pay karma. Okay, and we will now talk about how this works. But for now, we can all relate to our own personal lives, is that whenever we manipulate, cheat, lie, or scam somebody in whatever format, whether it's little or a lot, we don't feel good, do we? There's an inherent knowing that this is not right. That's because Samanya Dharma is in everyone. Okay. So now, why do we break it? Let's take an example of a scammer. Somebody, I just actually was looking at, there was a case, the IRS scam, and what happened was there was a telemarketing company that was calling Americans about 2 years ago, and they were saying that, we're going to arrest you because we have an arrest warrant because you haven't paid your IRS. And if you don't pay this amount of money in the next 10 days, then we'll send the cops and we'll put you into jail. And in about 2 or 3 years of this scam, they got about $300 million of innocent Americans. Now, they did this for 2 or 3 years, and they knew they were doing wrong. And if you type in YouTube IRS scam, and sometimes some of them, they know they're being cheated, so they will play along with the scammer, and they will say to the scammer, why are you doing this? Why are you cheating? And never ever will you hear the scammer saying, you're right, sir, I'm cheating, I'm sorry. No, the scammer acts as if, they deny what they're doing. Why? Because of what we call our likes and dislikes. That is our rāga-dveṣa. This is a huge topic in Vedanta, and our likes and dislikes belong to what? Vasanas. Okay. So that means if that scammer is cheating somebody, and for them, there is something in it for that. That is, they're gaining money. So if I go up to them, and we go up to them and say, please stop cheating, this is not right. You think they're going to stop? No way. Why? Because to them, the gain is way higher than the loss. That is, they do not see the loss. Because when they cheat, there's nothing to lose, right? It's just a simple gain. But they don't understand, as we'll get into the two principles that always ensure a loss, they don't understand that this loss is inevitable. And this is called karma. Okay, so therefore, one way to get across to them, the cops do this, is you have to let them know that the losses of persisting this is way greater than actually continuing. And the cops will do this. For example, they will stop somebody in a car, and the cop will ask, can I have your license? And this will happen usually if the person's drunk or just doesn't like authority. And if the person doesn't give the license, the cop doesn't get angry. The cop just, he's cool. So what the cop does is he says, sir, do you understand that, I'm just asking for your license, and it just takes you one little pull of your driver's license to see, so I can make sure that you're safe and everyone else is safe on the road. And then I can just check you 5 seconds, I'll give it back to you, you'll be going home, back to your wife, back to your kids. You wake up, you sleep in your own little warm, cozy bed. You wake up tomorrow having your own private, dinner. Everything will be fine. But if you don't give me your license, sir, then unfortunately you're going to have to come with me, and you will be locked up in a cold, freezing, rusty, dirty jail with other men who stink of alcohol, and they'll probably harass you. And then plus on top of that, you'll have to pay a huge fine. And then tomorrow, your kids, your children, or your wife will be concerned, and they will be angry at you. Plus your boss will be expecting you to come home, and you won't come to the work, and you'll get fired. So what did the cop do? He let the person know that the losses are way greater than his likes, and the person's likes are, of course, not to give the license. So that's one way to come across to them. But for the most part, this doesn't happen, because if someone's behind closed doors scamming other people, they're probably never going to be confronted like this. Okay, so we talked that raga and dveṣa are the primary principles which suppress us and cause us to break or violate samanya dharma. That is the only reason why we violate samanya dharma. Yeah, clear? So you can see how important our vasanas are. That is, if our vasanas continue grabbing hold of us, that simply means that what? I'm not going to get the time to inquire into the Upanishads, because I'll be too busy doing what I really like and avoiding what I dislike. And it's very easy to say that what most of us dislike is sitting down and inquiring, when there's so many other better things to do out there in the real world. So you see the problem? Because the likes and dislikes haven't been neutralized. So that is the first principle which we have to take care of. Okay, and that we take care of that through karma yoga, which we will get into. Okay, so there are two principles that ensure a loss for one who violates samanya dharma. And that is dṛṣta-phalam and adṛṣta-phalam. In Sanskrit, whenever you put an A in front, in most cases, it changes it into an antonym, into an opposite. Okay, so dṛṣta-phalam is immediate, that is seen consequences or seen results. In this case, even though the scammer will never get caught, the scammer never gets caught, but what happens? The scammer knows he did it. That means it's seen, it's immediate. So that means the scammer, knowing that he violated what is clearly not ethical, he didn't have or she didn't have the courage to stand up to noble virtues, and therefore they end up feeling guilty. They end up having self-esteem issues. They end up having fear, because now they're thinking, oh boy, I could probably get caught. Or they have inferiority complex, which is a huge play, not the only, for today's low self-esteem, is people are here and there violating samanya dharma by cheating, trying to grab, the favor of themselves at the expense of somebody else. And all these little things add up into dṛṣta-phalam and adṛṣta-phalam, unseen. And they cause different emotions like low self-esteem, inferiority complex, and it ends up into stress. Stress turns into eventual discomfort. Discomfort turns into lack of or interest in the world. And that turns into just a downward spiral, into a physical illness and so on. So you can see how there is no cheating in the universe. It's built in. And the second principle is adṛṣta-phalam. This is unseen result. So that means adṛṣta. So this man may do something, or this woman may do something that is clearly unethical, hurt somebody, cheat, lie to somebody, but it takes some time for this result to come back to them. And this usually can come weeks later, months later, years later, or sometimes when they're just completely purified. That's why saints can still have bad things happen to them, because they're what? The adṛṣta-phalam is coming back, and then we think what the saint is a scammer, but that's not the case. It's just that the karma is coming back to them. Okay, so this can happen, for example, if let's say I lie to someone or I steal somebody's money and I get away with it and nobody saw me. Well, what happens is years later I could be on a honeymoon, or I could just get some money from the ATM so that I can pay for a dinner with my friend. And then I'm waiting in line and somebody steals my wallet. And then obviously I find out, and then what happens? And then I curse, insult, or get angry. How dare somebody did that? And then what happens? I entertain negative ahimsa, that is thoughts of injury towards somebody. In other words, what? Creating more karma, because I just violated samanya dharma again, and that creates more karma back to me. You see how that works? That's called samsara, the endless perpetuating cycle. And usually is the situation is whatever happens, therefore, in our lives, whatever happens to you that is unfortunate, it's on the side of the unfortunate, it's not accidental. It's what? It's either dṛṣta or adṛṣta-phalam. Nothing happens by accidents. And this is a topic that is rather sensitive when it comes to murders or rape or killing or just massive cheating, or wife runs away with the man's money, or the man sleeps with other woman. See, these things don't happen by accident. They're actually all coordinated precisely to what? Receive the fruits of one's unfinished karma. So that means there is no mistakes in the universe. That's samanya dharma. Okay. So that means that whenever something unfortunate happens, we cannot get angry or try to retaliate, even though that other person has clearly done something bad, because through what? Samanya dharma, I need to understand that it's just what? A adṛṣta-phalam, an unseen consequences coming back to me because I did something to hurt somebody else at some time in the past which I don't even remember. And because it happened so long ago, I cannot connect the dots. Therefore what? I think that, they're the bad guy and I'm the victim. They're the perpetrator, right? It doesn't work like that. Both the victim and the perpetrator came there for a reason, because the victim is paying the price and the perpetrator has to finish off their karma, and they what? Came together from Ishvara, you could say, agreement in order to work out each other's karma. Okay. Alright, so that's samanya dharma. Any questions, comments, opinions, observations?
Andre, what about crimes against children and things like that?
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. Even children in Africa who are under extreme circumstances, getting their arms cut off and being abandoned and abused by a father or mother, it's the same concept. It's there because they're paying off their karma. We had the same situation in World War II. A bunch of young men go into the trenches and they get what? They live for 1 or 2 days and get killed. in order to pay off their karma from some point in the past life, that is. Yeah. So this becomes much easier to understand if we stop looking at just this life, because that is what? Mistaken that there is time. There is no time to any of this, guys. This is eternal creation. So if we look at lives as an infinite reproduction of more jivas, that is more bodies, then the whole karma concept begins to make sense. That means it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, I get abused because I did something in this life. It could simply mean that I was abusive to somebody else, you know, generations ago. Yeah. Okay. We also have to mention a little disclaimer about past life. That is actually a bogus teaching simultaneously, because past life will imply time, and it doesn't work like that. Okay, but so I'll for now just say in that context of past life, but there is no past life actually.
Are you able to expand on that now? Or...
No, we need a proper teaching, because then I have to get into the whole time, space, and all that. Yeah.
Just a quick question. If someone's perpetrating something in order for you to pay off their karma, do they generate bad karma?
They generate a karma for themselves out of their own ignorance, because they have no... See, because it's in it for them. Yeah. They think they're going to gain by stealing. Yeah. So it's ignorance that's the problem. Yeah. So the question is also, is it Ishvara? Is it God that's creating all of this evil? No. It's ignorance of Ishvara. That is free will. We call it Purushartha. That is, I have the free will to what? Do something or not do something. And if I'm not educated, then by default I will be steered to what? Do something that is gaining me something at the expense of somebody else. That's the importance of being educated about the whole Ishvara. Otherwise, all sorts of problems stem up out of this one simple fact, not knowing Ishvara, not knowing God, not having a relationship with Creator. Yeah. Okay, the next dharma is Swadharma. We're going to revisit the dharmas in Bhagavad Gita. So there's a little bit more to say about them. Okay, now we have Swadharma. Swadharma, as we said, is your own personal duties or responsibilities. Now, several generations ago, Swadharma, that is what my duty as a person is, was very easy, because all we had to do was just copy what our parents did. If my dad had a grocery store, or my mom had, as a daughter, my mom was, let's say she was knitting or repairing shoes, then that was just what the child did. So there was no question or problem, what is the Swadharma of the person. But today we have a problem. Today there are so many options, and that is avenues of exploring, that it becomes very hard to understand what am I supposed to be doing in this world. It's a fair question, right? What is the highest and greatest good of my action or my service to the world? And the answer is very simple. How to know that is Swadharma. Just look at Swadharma as an appropriate action in every moment. So that means that this is nothing mystical, that is, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to what? Go through different passions or explore and get into them. No, it just means do what is appropriate in the moment. For example, if somebody, an old lady's walking, and she has her bottom of the bag, her groceries fall out, then if I just look at that and I go, somebody else is going to help with that, then in that moment, I'm going to feel guilty probably, because I knew that I could have helped her. So Swadharma in that moment means, let me help the lady. So Swadharma means what? If you want an example of ultimate confidence, it is following your Swadharma 24/7, doing an action appropriate for the moment. Confidence has nothing to do with putting on, some chest out, head out, and, NLP, that kind of conditioning, or pretending, putting his suit on. It's got nothing to do with that. Confidence just means being completely real. down to earth, doing what you're supposed to do according what the situation is presenting. Like if you go to India, they have no confidence issues, by the way, zero compared to the West. I spent quite a lot of time in India. They're just like completely asking you honestly what needs to be asked. If they need money, they're just going to ask you. One time I was on a scooter in India, and an old lady, she just pulls me off the scooter while I'm actually going on it. She says, "Can I have some money?" That's what I call ultimate confidence. That's Satyam Vadam, right? Truthful, courageous speaking. Because she was honest. She needed some money and she just grabbed me and said, "Can I have some money?" Has nothing to do with the scooter. But what do we do in the West? Oh, the situation is inappropriate. The timing should be right. It has nothing to do with this. It's just being totally courageous in every moment to act as you're asked. Okay. So that means that our Swadharma is different roles that we play with anyone in any situation. If, for example, I go to work, my Swadharma, that is my role, is what? To be an honest employee. So I will put on a employee sort of a demeanor, sort of an attitude. And then when I go home to whoever it is, boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, I will be what? I will just be a small kid to my mom or dad. I will just be their child. That is, my Swadharma is of a child. When I go to a friend, my Swadharma changes into being a friend. When I go into a class like this, my Swadharma is to listen. My Swadharma is to teach. My Swadharma is to learn. My Swadharma is to help somebody who needs some kind of assistance in the moment. So that simply means that your Swadharma changes all the time and you need to perform it honestly and directly without any hesitation. That's called ultimate confidence. Okay. And also because we are always relating with the world, we're never not relating with the world, that is with people. That means that if I choose to say, I don't care. Like let's say a mom says to her child, "I don't care. I don't want to take care of my child." Because see, it's the mom's Swadharma to take care of the child, right? But if she refuses, what does that mean? The child can get scarred for life. And that means the child would then what? In their adulthood have a bunch of distortions, and they would what? They're also influence their circle of influence in a negative way, because now they will not have any confidence, they'll have abandonment issues, and the world doesn't need more abandonment issues. We need people that are just honest, open. Okay, so you can see how your Swadharma is important at every moment, and how responsible we need to be when we're playing the role that we're playing. Okay. Now we go into loka-sangraha. So this is our third dharma. Okay, this means expanding or extending yourself beyond just doing good in a society, beyond just doing good for yourself, beyond just following Samanya Dharma and Swadharma. That is fine. If you want to have a good time in Mithya and just be a good person that is in the world, you follow the first two. But when it comes for Sarvam Brahmaha, that is knowledge, self-knowledge, then loka-sangraha becomes extremely important. So what does this mean? It just simply causes us to look at the interconnectedness of everything. That is, we stop paying attention on just me, and we start to include how actually I am benefiting as a result of all of the things that went in the background behind my knowledge. For example, this house, think about how many people actually constructed or were involved in the construction of this house. There was the truckers, there was the miners who dug up the soil, the people who got the trees and got the plywood, the roof and the nails. All of these things were done by different people. Same with the road system. How many people were involved in making you drive safely? A lot. So that means loka-sangraha forces us to look what? beyond just me. That is, I look how everything's actually interconnected here, and how without the assistance of others, I could have never made it, and I would have never been here listening to this or doing what I'm doing. So this means what? Loka-sangraha gets us to appreciate the world, appreciate everything in the world, because it's only because of what? The world and other people who have gotten us where we are today. Parents, friends, like I said, the road system, how many people were involved in making this projector, right? Inventors, scientists, they spend their whole lives just dedicating for electronics so that now today we can benefit from it. Okay, so this means that it's looking at the world in a form of care. That means you start to care about the whole world because you're seeing it from a perspective of the whole. Okay. So this means we are becoming a bigger contributor, and we are giving up the usual attitude, which is me, 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 which is a very small, narrow-minded thinking. This is when loka-sangraha, we start to think us, right? It's no longer about me, it's about us. So therefore, we start to recognize that interconnectedness. So one point to present here is that we all are, by default, every human being has selfishness, that is self-preservation. And you shouldn't feel guilty for this because it's inbuilt. When we are born, we naturally want to survive, and we still want to survive every moment. And this can be misinterpreted as I'm selfish, but it's actually not that. It's just because we have a body, we have a mind, we have an intellect, and this system wants us to keep surviving. So don't feel guilty if you kind of feel that you've got too much, or others should be having more, or any kind of guilt. It's actually completely unjustified because none of that guilt is yours. Okay. And this also causes us to start looking away from what is not working. This is what the mind's always doing. It's looking for things to complain about, grievances and complaints about what is missing, what is not good enough, how I could have more, how what I have is, could be better. I could be in a better location, I could have better health, I could have a better job, I could have better friends. In other words, the mind is always looking for what is missing, and loka-sangraha causes us to appreciate what we actually do have. Think about it. You have arms, you have legs. There are some people who don't have arms and legs. You have a sharp mind that's able to understand this. You have interest sufficient enough to get you into Vedanta, the highest knowledge there is. So this means, it's very beautifully summarized in one little Upanishad statement, and it goes like this. I complained that I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet. So this means that I did not appreciate what I had until I saw what somebody in a way worse position than me, it forced me to actually appreciate what I do have. So therefore, loka-sangraha is crucial for one of the values necessary to understand the Upanishads. Okay? Because remember, everything is the whole, and you're not separate from it. So it doesn't make sense to think me, 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 me. We have to start thinking us. That's one of the most primary attributes of a wise person. It's called compassion, thinking and caring for the whole, for the world. Okay. And of course, the more we start to think about how can I give, what does that imply? That means I have. That means I have enough. But if I think what can I gain? That means what? I don't. That means I'm scarce. So that means what? The more I want to grab from the world, that's what most of the world's doing, we're trying to grab, the more I'm implying silently, I don't have, I'm empty, and I lack. And how does lacking, emptiness, come or compare or hold up to the definition of Brahman, the whole? It doesn't. You see why loka-sangraha is important? So that means if I start to give and appreciate what I do have, I am acknowledging what? The whole. Because I am what? Non-separate from it. Yeah. All right. So now we go into the second distortion, which is emotional maturity. This is a big one. Okay. In order to understand the Upanishads, and this is something you want to hear in the spiritual world, by the way, because when you jump in, we go straight into what? The self, consciousness. But we don't address the primary constituent required to be purified and matured in order to understand this knowledge. Because if you hang around for Vedanta for a couple of years, or even these Osho people, or many other type of famous gurus, they go there for years and years and years, and nothing happens. For example, one of the first lines in Muji's latest book, Muji, is, there is no qualifications for moksha. It says that on the first page. But look through how much qualification Vedanta actually goes through before we can actually understand what we're all seeking, permanent happiness. Can we gain permanent happiness if we have emotional issues? No way, impossible. Where's the logic? So that means what? Those who are going off to these wonderful gurus with emotional issues, looking for sarvam brahmaha, everything is Brahman, and yet what? Still got worldly issues to resolve. Still, still have problems with the world, themselves, their parents, their siblings, their children, still have grudges, unforgiveness, grievances. Where is the logic in that? So therefore, emotional maturity is important. Okay, so let's address a little bit of why our emotional maturity is not as it could be. And one of the big reasons is when we grow up, we categorize emotions into good or bad. So if I ask you, for example, which is good? If I say love, is that good or bad? Good. If I say jealousy, bad. If I say anger, if I say peace, good. So instantly there's this association with good or bad. And so therefore we're trained to what? Only associate with the good and avoid the bad. Now how does avoiding the half, that is the bad, how does that hold up with the whole? It doesn't at all. It contradicts reality. So therefore when we grow up, in order to please our parents or the society, for example, our mom tells us, good boys don't get angry, or good girls don't get sad. So what? We end up wanting to please my mom and dad, and then in order to be good, I have to avoid the other half. I have to avoid anger, I have to avoid jealousy, I have to avoid all of these things that later on in life end up as what? Distortions, as a result of my suppressions. So that's where the emotional maturity comes in. Looking at these emotional distortions as a result of the suppressions that were mostly coming from the childhood. And we all have them. Nobody is exempt or out of this problem. Okay, so here's a question. When your hand hurts, do you go, oh, I'm just going to suppress it, I'm going to put it away? Or do you immediately attend to it and do something to alleviate the pain? Yeah, alleviate the pain. So then where's the logic of when a bad emotion pops up, we do what? We put it aside. But we don't do that to our physical body, but we do that to our emotions. So you can see how there's a distortion there in a society. And it's not your fault because nobody knew this. You see, our parents got trained the way they got trained, and their parents taught them what they taught them. So we just have a lineage of ignorance continuing all the way to this generation. So that means it's your job to now take ownership of this and start to clear these emotions out. And we're going to show you how to do this through karma yoga. Okay, so that means emotional signatures or presence of an emotional situation should not be avoided, because emotion is actually one of your best friends. It's a simple indicator. It reveals what is currently a distortion that is present in my mind or intellect. So that means if I avoid the emotion, I just took something that was telling me if I addressed it, I would have been able to move on. But because I decided to put it aside, I just postponed my success in being a mature human being. Yeah. Okay, so they're useful indicators. Okay, so now let's talk about the management solutions for emotions. Like what to do about this. The first, before anything, this doesn't matter what field we're in, what expertise you're in, or what the situation, we first need to acknowledge it. How would I know if I first say, okay, it's present, it's here. I'm experiencing frustration, annoyance, impatience, whatever it is. It's here, it's present. So that's the first step. Then the other thing that we can do is we can reframe our emotion. I'll give you a little story. I have a friend, he's in Sydney, and he's a Qigong teacher. And he's about 30 years old now, but his father sexually abused him when he was around 9 or between 9 and 12, or I think even earlier. And he forgot about this until he was about 19, and suddenly a bunch of emotions, hatred and anger towards his father started to come out. So he didn't know why, so he decided to call his dad and say, Dad, did you, I'm getting memories, flashbacks, did you by any way, abuse me when I was a child? And of course the father denied everything, but through a little bit more investigation, it was pretty obvious that yes, the father did do some of the worst things imaginable to my friend. And my friend had just every reason to physically kill his father because it was just terrible what he did. But he didn't. So he had to deal with these strong emotions. And what he decided to do was he decided to look at it from a different angle. He said, for example, maybe my father was also abused, so my dad didn't know any better. Or maybe, it's not that. Maybe I'm looking at this from a much more intense angle than it actually is. Maybe I'm just intensifying this. And also one of the things that he did was, who else was there who actually took care of me? So in other words, he stopped focusing on his father and started to address those characters in his life who actually loved him. So this is called reframing. That is looking at the situation that's arising in a different angle. So that's why we have, a glass that is either empty, and I look at the glass, and if I'm narrowly focusing on the empty glass, then what? Then that's the exact feeling that I'm going to have in correlation with my focus. But if I change my angle, then what happens? Then that's the exact feeling I have in correlation with the change of my focus. You see? So that's what reframing means. And this is also letting us know that because now I'm an adult, you're an adult now, there is no reason to hate and continue these feelings or whatever feelings they are, because as an adult, we have every choice, every option to change them around. So there's no more excuse to carry on, with holding grudges or any kind of feelings towards anyone. Okay. The other thing is that we can do is we can write them out. So if the person is not present, then it's very easy just to write down how one feels. This is actually my favorite way, and it causes you to be just completely, make it your own. Like, here's how I feel, and here's what I think, but here's how I could look at it instead. Here's what I may not be looking at. Here's other ways of looking at this. Here's what I wish to, here's how I wish to actually feel as a result of my forgiveness. So you can just make it a little nice story and then just throw it away. But it helps a lot just by writing it out. Yeah. Especially if the person's not present. And finally, Ishvara is always there. You just have to invoke its assistance by prayers. That means that you can say, Ishvara, I don't know any better. I'm trying my best, but I don't know. Please send me the right teaching, the right method, the right whatever it is, so that when I do get involved, it will, help me to move forward or accelerate my my progress. So that means, as Jesus would say, ask and you will receive. So you just need to ask. And when is Ishvara not present? Never. So that means you can ask for help anytime, before bed, during the day. If we're in a conversation or a confrontation, then we just ask Ishvara, what would you have me do in this moment? Because I don't know. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to move forward. How would you have me move forward? Remember, Ishvara is the greater intelligence. So why not tap into this intelligence? Why depend on our own small intelligence? It doesn't make sense. So therefore, start asking. Okay. Questions? All right. Now, let's go on to the other dharma, value, which is self-esteem. This is a big one in the West. Inferiority complex, not feeling good enough, not feeling competent enough, skillful enough, important enough, feeling small, incompetent, ugly, not pretty. It comes different flavors for both men and women. Men has, issues with power. They want to be somebody. So they get into, they try to become some kind of a high status figure. A woman also, like let's say, for example, a woman wants to be, she puts on a nice dress, a nice makeup, and then to compete with other women, basically. It's not the only reason, but in other words, they're doing it out of inferiority complex, and they're trying to They're trying to compensate for it with what's called superiority complex, because they cannot stand the low self-esteem. So then we try to be somebody in the world. We try to add some kind of status, put on nice clothes, carry a briefcase, look really professional, really sparkling, to give the world a status, or give the world that I am somebody. You see how instantly transparent the world becomes once you gain this knowledge? Yeah. Okay. So now this inferiority complex, basically, we can summarize it as I am limited. Basically, that summarizes what ignorance is of your nature. I am limited. And that can come in the form of I am inadequate, I'm not good enough, and so on. Okay. So now let's investigate the cause of this. So when we're born, the first thing that we all have, and we can all relate to this, is we feel like we're the center of the universe. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So we feel like we're the center of the universe, but simultaneously we're seeing that we're not getting what we want. In other words, sometimes we get what we want, sometimes we don't. And then we make a conclusion, well then I am not good enough. Because if I am the center of the universe, but I'm not getting what I want, therefore I must be inadequate. So this association gets linked up. And therefore simultaneously seeing what everyone else getting what they want. So therefore they must be better than I am. And then we carry this inferiority complex that I am inferior to other people. Yeah. So therefore, the message here is do not feel guilty for this, because frankly, we had no choice. Nobody gets born in the world saying, I'm going to have low self-esteem, I'm going to feel inadequate, I'm going to, be small, and I'm just not going to feel good. Nobody wants that. We can all agree with that, right? Okay, so therefore there is no reason to feel guilty about inferiority complex. Okay, so of course we have a superiority complex, as I said, that is to compensate for this dislike about feeling small. I remember when I was like 17, I did it as a teenager. I tried to be somebody. I think we all kind of have that in our lives. We put on a suit, or we put on a business suit, or a nice dress, or we get a nice woman, a trophy wife, so that now I'm somebody, or the wife gets a nice man, then she's now somebody. So all of these things stem from this inferiority complex. Okay, so now we have a solution, and that is, so what's the solution to inferiority or self-esteem issues? The solution is very simple. It actually depends on what your goal is. If your goal is sarvam brahmaha, that is, I am here to understand myself as the whole, then is there going to be any time or any involvement in what's more worldly matters? If your goal is the highest, no way. So therefore, our low self-esteem only originates if our goals are what? Worldly. That is, I want to be somebody in the world. I want to appear someone in the world. I want to make success in the world. I want to be healthy in the world. I want to be slim in the world. So, therefore, if the goal changes from worldly affairs into sarvam brahmaha, that is, I am the whole, then what? There is zero time, energy, or interest in entertaining our thoughts, desires, and fears around small, in comparison, irrelevant things of the world. You see? So it depends on what your goal is. Okay. That is, know your life goal and as sarvam brahmaha, and then there is no time to waste on small matters. Okay, and the final distortion that we need to address to understand the Upanishads is our conclusions about the world and other people. Okay, let's cover the world here. So, when we open our eyes and we see the news and the media, what is a natural conclusion? The world is in some kind of state, some kind of condition, right? It's in a mess, basically. And this is actually a very narrow view, because see, the media is not interested in showing, how a community cleans up a beach. It just doesn't make money. It doesn't entertain. It doesn't capture us. So the media's job and the newspaper's job is to show, what they show. They generally show, on the line of the negative. But you have to understand that that's not all there is. There's actually way more good that's happening in the world. We just don't see it. How many beach cleanups do you see? I've been to Bali, lived there for 2 years, and they have a green school there. You know what they teach this? Because Bali has a pollution problem. So they teach the Bali kids in green school to go out every weekend and just clean up the region. So they're just like innocent kids cleaning up, and they have all these cleaning up campaigns. And scientists are working for the betterment of the society, of your comfort. The economists are working to develop the wealth of the country. The politicians are improving our economic and relational and negotiations with both humanity within the nation and other nations. There is so much good stuff that's happening in the world. People are cleaning up the oceans. And we completely fail to see that because we only focus on the negative. And so our experience, it just replicates that focus. That means what? We need to change our focus from what is obvious to what is not so obvious. And what is not so obvious is all of the good that's happening in the world. Okay. And finally, our position about other people. This is a big one. So that is our opinions. Because remember, Sarvam Brahmaha means everything is the whole, and you're not separate from the whole. And one of the easiest ways to show our weakness is by judging other people, when it comes to other people. That is what we think about them and how they are, how they're not. So that means we have to resolve and settle accounts with others, especially with those that are close to us, like our parents, because we sometimes have deep-seated emotional issues to our parents, to our siblings, our children, our wife, our husband, our ex-partners, especially about previous friends or relationships that have gone wrong. Because any tie that has disconnected abruptly, that's probably left some kind of an unresolved emotional scar. And so, therefore, we need to, as I said before, we need to reframe that. But that ends up into what? Looking at people as you, a divine expression of Ishvara, because that's what people are. You see? So, that means resolving our views about the world and settling our accounts about other people in a form of forgiving them, looking at the good side of them, reframing the situation, writing it out, asking for help. Ishvara, please release this emotion. It's not helping me. It's not serving me. Because they're not suffering. I'm suffering. I'm the one that's carrying that emotion. Right? So, these are all the options that are available to us, and the 4 distortions that we need to address to understand the Upanishads. Okay. So any questions around the 3 dharmas, or emotional maturity, self-esteem, or the world? This is a qualifier, by the way, before we go into the Bhagavad Gita next week, chapter 2 of the self-consciousness. Okay. So next week we will, we're now at the end of this prayer. Let's sing it together. 3, 2, 1. Om apyayantu mamangani Vak pranashchakshushrotramadho balamindriyani cha sarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakarot anirakaranam astvanirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirate ya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi santu te mayi santu om shanti shanti shantihi. So all of this wisdom that we've done in the last 3 sessions, right? It's all contained in just one simple short prayer. That's how much depth there is to it. Okay, so next week we will go into the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, when Arjuna starts to ask Krishna, how do I get out of this life existential problem? And Arjuna also asks Krishna to tell him, what does an enlightened person look like? How are they like? How do they conduct themselves? How do they carry themselves? And because Arjuna is a sincere seeker, so he wants to know. So this we will do next week. Okay. And let's end. Together. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Okay. May all be happy. May all be free from illness. May all behold good things. May no one suffer.
Sandra, if we're all one whole, how can there be a separate I to reincarnate?
There's no separate I. There's only one I apparently appearing as many. That means when ignorance is removed, the understanding of the statement is only one I is known. See, as long as one believes they're the body and the mind, it will seem like that I is separate from the whole. So what we need to do is we need to remove your body, your mind, your intellect, because they're called adhyasa, superimpositions, and they superimpose over the self. And then the self thinks, the reflected, because now the self is aware of what? The body and the mind. And so then you claim that ownership as I, meaning the body and the mind. So when we negate the body and the mind and the intellect, then it becomes very obvious that there's actually nobody here but me, consciousness. Right. And everything else is just an appearance generated by Maya. And then we also understand that there's actually no Maya either. Because if I say there's Maya, that's another duality. See, I'm saying on one hand there's only consciousness, but now I say there's Maya. But there's only me, consciousness. So this chart is only as a preliminary, a prerequisite understanding. So we have to first separate satyam, consciousness, from mithya, from your body, your mind, the world, in order to discriminate the world from the one that's aware. Okay, and then what? You do that through inquiry. That is inquiring. Like, for example, who is... See, inquiry cannot be actually taught in one line. We have to go through a certain system. For example, we're going to learn what is the reflected awareness and what is original awareness. Okay, and by understanding both, you can then negate the reflected awareness and understand yourself directly as original awareness. Because reflected awareness means what? The original awareness, like the sun, is shining on... I know it's a dualistic statement, that's why I say it implies time, but I'm going to stick with that because that's the way the mind will understand. It's shining on, that is Maya. And Maya, in Maya, generates what? Maya is reflected consciousness. That is, in other words, Ishvara 2, Maya means the unmanifest. Ishvara 2 means manifest. So that means Ishvara 2 comes out of Maya. So that means when original consciousness, I, that's the real I, shines on Maya, then because Maya generates what's called a reflecting medium, that is the subtle body. And now, before I go forward, tell me what is contained in the subtle body, in your mind, in your intellect? Your thoughts, right? Your life, your story. Who am I? My driver's license character. So that means what? The driver's license character is being shone on by original consciousness, and then I, the original consciousness, claims I am that story. Claims I am my mind, my intellect, my story. You know, I'm a male, I'm a female, I am this, I am that. Because what is the mind and the intellect other than just a story, a concept, a construct, which we have created from day one. From the day we were born, what? We were told who we are and who we're not. And it was limited based on the experience of where we grew up. That means if I grew up in Congo, I would be told one thing, and then if I grew up in America, I'm told another thing. And yet what? They're both the subtle body, the mind and intellect. So that means when original awareness shines on the Congo boy, I think I'm of this gender, I'm of this nature. When original awareness shines on an American mind, then what? The person thinks I'm an American. I am this story, I am, this is my country. So that means what? When Maya comes into the picture, it's a power in consciousness. It generates, Maya is a pure reflection. But when the mind and the intellect comes into the picture, it contaminates the reflection. So therefore, we associate the I with the contamination of the mind and the intellect and not the original consciousness. Nisargadatta Maharaj, he called this the I sense, if you read that book. And it's very confusing because if somebody who doesn't know what it's relating to, they would take the I sense as the final. But that's not the final. The I sense is called the reflected Atman. There's Brahman and Atman. The I sense is the reflected consciousness. Now, just a moment ago, 3 minutes ago, I said reflected consciousness is what? Pure. Right? That's what Ishvara is. It's pure reflected consciousness. But the problem is, because the reflecting medium, that is the subtle body, is so closely linked with the reflecting consciousness, the reflected consciousness, that is the I am sense, cannot tell the contaminations apart from the pure reflection. So therefore it claims ownership of what? Its inadequacies, its limitations, its all sorts of problems that were accumulated as a result of dealing in the world. So what we're doing here is we have to what? First of all, teach you who is this subtle body, this jiva, who is the reflected consciousness, who is the original consciousness, so that you can then what? Discriminate the original from the reflection. Okay, so that means as long as there's a reflection, I will believe I'm the body and the mind. That is the fundamental problem in this. Ramana Maharshi, his whole teaching was about separating the body and the mind from consciousness. But he didn't have a proper teaching, unfortunately, because he wasn't a teacher. He just picked up from some Mahatmas that were in that region in Tirumavalai. So he just taught the best he could. So we tell you clearly by firstly defining the reflected awareness, original awareness, the reflecting medium, so that you know what to negate. That's why knowledge is important. Otherwise, there's no way to negate. We will mistake our thoughts, our doubts, our feelings as the I. But the I is always free of the thoughts, the feelings, and the doubts. Yeah. Okay. Actually, the reflected consciousness, it's a huge, ginormous teaching, and it's going to involve several sessions. We're going to get to that by session 40, so it's going to take us around 4 or 5 months to get to that, because it is the key. Once you understand the reflected consciousness and you're able to negate it, then you can claim ownership of the I as Brahman. Yeah. Okay, but more importantly than that, remember the qualities that we talked about: emotional management, dharmas, self-esteem, conclusions about the world and people. That has to be sorted out, because I've seen so many come to Vedanta and they still don't get it after years and years. We have like 70, 60, 80-year-old people come in and they still don't get it. Why? Because there's still the mind's still not primed. It's not ready. That's why the qualifications are so small. Yeah, that's why we're stressing this on and on. Just the primary basics. Yeah. Yeah, so that means the sadhana is purifying the mind. You need to purify the mind, a clear, sattvic mind, a mind that reflects pure consciousness. And by virtue of that, this statement that we will be reading will make much more sense. If the mind is tamasic, clouded with its thoughts, its contaminations, this is not going to go well at all. It's going to sound intellectual. You're going to say Vedanta is intellectual. But Vedanta is not intellectual. It's meant to provide you a mahavakya or a verse, and you're meant to inquire what it actually means. And the more clearer your mind is, the more you can get the depth of that statement. I will actually look at for me it takes like 1 hour just to look at a verse like this, because there's so much depth in one single statement. But if the mind remains ignorant, it's just going to read right over it. And then go next statement, and that's how we read books. We just don't get the depth of them. Yeah. So therefore you can see how important a pure mind is. Yeah.
So Andre, just as it's going to be a hard one to answer, I guess, or it could be, but having studied this for a long time, not Vedanta but non-duality for a long time. And being relatively new to Bhagavad Gita and Upanishad, I feel the questions arising again, the same sort of questions that I've asked thousands of times or hundreds of times, that
they're arising here, mind and intellect.
Yeah, but the question is that those questions that I've asked, just because the question I'm asking is because we're putting the teaching into language, it's inherently contradictory.
Dualistic, it's dualistic by nature.
You try and answer a question, but it
has a
satisfies, but then creates two more questions and two more questions. So the approach to Vedanta, do I just sort of sit with those and be peaceful with those contradictions and they all resolve at lesson 66, or do I ask those questions again, like the big one that always comes up is free will, that always comes up, and it's sort of it's too, I've asked so many teachers that and never been satisfied with
you will never be satisfied ever, because whenever you get an answer, that answer is a product of Maya, Mithya. Yes. And as long as the problem is you're missing the point. The question keeps coming up, but in other words, you pay attention to the content, but you never turn inwards and look at the one because of which the content is known for what it is. Self, consciousness. Yes. That's the problem. And the questions will never stop. That means, as Ramana says, turn your attention inwards, back to the self, and stay there. Yes. That means refuse, as soon as a thought comes up, address it, acknowledge, step one. That's a thought, but because of whom is this thought known? Because of me. Are you aware of this? Are you aware of this?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And if I stripped your awareness out, would you be aware of this thought? No. So therefore, you're giving attention to the thoughts that are endlessly popping up in the mind, but we never give attention to that prior to the thought, the substratum on which the thought is imposed on. Yeah. So, for example, you see, here we are, totally paying attention to the colors and the text and all that, right? And we think it's all spectacular. In other words, the world is what? Spectacular. But as soon as I turn off this projector, what do? We turn our heads and we walk out. Nobody actually acknowledges the wall. The substratum because of which this image is possible. That wall is the self, the substratum upon which all thoughts are known to be what they are. So that's the problem. We always put attention on the superimposition, whether it's a thought, a feeling, an emotion, a doubt, especially doubt, that's a big one. Questions about me, every content is nothing but just what? A projection. And the projection is only possible because of what? The substratum. Turn your attention on me. That is consciousness. Not on the content. You see? So that means Vedanta is about negating, not denying, but through understanding. Only through understanding can you properly negate. Negating the content, negating what's endlessly, because everything that shows up is mithya. It's an illusion, it's a dream. And the dream never ends. The dream is eternal because consciousness is eternal. So that means what? The questions are eternal. That means there is no ending to any of this until you realize the truth that you alone, because of you, that is consciousness, can these endless thoughts be known for what they are. You see? So therefore, the summary is put your attention back on the self and stay there. It's a sadhana, it's a practice. It takes effort. Because why? The day we're born, we're always what? Told to look at the content. And, oh, I don't feel well. Oh, can you help me? So we always what? We address the content. We vomit our emotions to our friends, to our mom, our dad, our wife, our sister, and then they're like empathetic. Oh, it's okay. Let me hear you talk about it. Oh, what else can you think? Oh, it wasn't so bad. Maybe let's go and solve this. So it's all about the content, but nobody puts their attention on the substratum. You, consciousness. That's our problem. And yet the difference between the substratum and Maya is so obvious. I said on session 1, moksha is easier than 1 + 1. Why? Because you cannot help but to be aware all the time. Is there one moment when you're not aware? Can you find one moment when you were not experiencing yourself?
You're in deep sleep?
We're going to cover Mandukya Upanishad. We're going to cancel that. Okay? You're there, believe me. Is there one moment when you are not experiencing yourself? Can you find it? Even if you said yes, you'll be contradicting yourself. You know why? Because if you said, yes, I didn't experience myself on January the 2nd, 1995, what's my natural question going to be? How do you know that? Obviously implying that you must have known and been there.
Or drunk.
Or drunk, right? Like, how do you know you were drunk? Because you were still there. The witness, that is the non-experiencing consciousness, is ever present. It never leaves. It's eternal. So the question was, can you remember or know one moment when you're not experiencing yourself? The answer is no. Remove the word your. Okay? Now the question is there one moment when you are not experiencing the self? That's the self. That means what? You're always experiencing what you're looking for. What you're seeking, you're always experiencing. That's why the search stops in Vedanta. That's what Vedanta means. The search, you stop searching because you discover what you were looking for, you already are right now. Your consciousness, you're aware of this. That's it. And that means what? Coming in terms that there is nothing other than what? The self taking on the form of the experience. Because that's what self does. Self and mithya are together, and they're always taking the form of one emotion, another emotion, a color, the bird, the tree, the picture, your body, and yet what? No matter what it takes on, you're always what? Conscious and aware. So that means if you can come to the resolution that there is all there is to this spiritual search is just your awareness alone, your search immediately stops. Yeah. But is that going to happen? Probably, or it may or may not. That's why it doesn't work just to say this once. Because as soon as you go out there, what happens? Instantly we associate back with our thoughts, our bodies, our minds, and we what? Put attention back onto the content. And yet all the sages from day one have been saying, every Upanishads text has been saying, turn your mind on me alone. That is yourself. And let everything else continue, because everything else is being constantly what? Guided by Ishvara, by the Creator. And you have zero control over what happens in your life. How it turns out, that is all under Ishvara's control. Your only job here on earth is to put your attention back on the self and stay there. And the longer you can do that, the more, quote, ananda, the bliss of the self, starts to be known for what it is. That means the self is what? The origin from which all beauty originates. In other words, it's the beauty that makes beauty beautiful. So then how does it make sense to go chasing for the beauty in the world if I already know that I am the source of the beauty which makes the world beautiful? That's why your search stops. That's why you stop seeking and looking out in the world as if there is something there to add bliss onto me. When what? I am the origin of that bliss. Because without you, consciousness, how would you be able to know what is blissful, what is happy? If I strip your awareness out, could you even be aware of your happiness? No, no way. That means what? You're always prior to whatever emotion, whatever content, whatever thought appears. And moksha means discriminating me from what appears in me. You see? That's all there is to moksha. That sums up Vedanta. And then, when you have discriminated enough, then you recognize that what I'm discriminating is actually also me. And then the inquirer also disappears. That means I am Brahman. Okay, so that means that we have to start by discriminating first. But before we discriminate, we have to learn what we are discriminating. That's the point of this teaching. That's why we're teaching about the mind, intellect, subtle body. That means what? Everything here is a throwaway. Huh? We're learning all of this just to throw it away one day. Right? Because what? You have to learn first what to discriminate, and once you learn what to discriminate, you go, oh my God, even my mind and intellect is not me. So now all of the knowledge in Vedanta that is stored in your mind and intellect, even the mind and intellect gets discarded. In other words, you discard years and years of effort only to arrive to the self. So that's how Vedanta is, and why it's systematic. It's a well thought out system, and it's worked for thousands of years. It works extremely well when followed. Yeah. So that's the answer to your question.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah.
Got time for one more?
Yeah.
It's about karma. It's the only thing that I struggle with, what you were saying. Because of the interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah.
You know, the interconnectedness.
It's impersonal.
I can't see how karma can be attributed to one person when there's so many factors, like,
Yeah.
you know, someone born in a vicarage in Hampshire is going to have a very different life. And you could say that's because of their karma, but everything is so intertwined.
Yeah.
And if you do wake up and you...
Or you
get back to
actually
the
you actually never slept. The self never sleeps.
Yeah,
So there's no
true.
waking up.
True, yeah, good
I mean,
point,
you're
yeah.
aware right now.
Yeah.
So you're not sleeping.
But if you let go of Maya completely and you get back to the self, surely karma dissipates at that point, because isn't karma just a
Association with the body and
with,
the mind.
with Maya, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good point. It's impersonal, first of all, because see, every teaching that I provide, I'm going to cancel out. Even karma. There is no such thing as karma.
Right.
Because I only speak karma from the point of view of you believing you're a person.
Right.
And then when you realize you're not a person, we even throw karma away. So the answer to that is, see, you didn't do anything. But if I believe that I'm a person, then I believe I did it. So I believe what? The karma is mine.
Yeah.
That's why we teach you about karma. Because you need to discard karma also. So all of this is about just learning what to dismiss, discard.
Okay.
You see?
Andre, on that point, would you say a lot of Neo-Advaita stay kind of stuck on things like karma, reincarnation, rebirth, and don't go beyond that, like you're saying?
No, Neo-Advaita is very simple. Neo-Advaita just says, just forget about your thoughts. It's all illusion. Just jump straight into the self.
Right.
It's a very simple message. Now, we don't disagree with Neo-Advaita because they're actually correct. But they don't have a way to arrive to the self. It's a systematic approach. Because if I just go and say I'm consciousness, while I have all these problems going on, how is that going to play out? Because I'm still going to believe they're my problems, but I'm trying to attain the self. That's why we need to educate you what to discard first. You see, that you're not the mind, the body, the karma, the vasanas, the thoughts, the feelings, none of that. Yeah, so that's why it's a systematic approach. Yeah.
So maybe not Neo-Advaita, but other schools of thought that do they sort of stay stuck in karma and things? I don't know, Buddhists. I don't know much about them. But
Hare Krishnas, for example.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, for example, they treat the satyam, the consciousness, as like a state, and it's a state to attain. In other words, you see the contradiction. How does that play out with the word whole? That means what? This is something outside the whole, and I have to do certain deeds, dharmas, and then by following these virtues, I will attain Krishna. So in other words, it's a Dvaitic system. It's a misunderstanding of reality, and they're very prevalent today. They have a certain, we're not discarding them. They play a certain role. It's better than somebody going fishing, but it's still ignorance about what it means to say sarvam brahmaha. Yeah. So that means that nothing here is separate, nothing's apart from you. Now, of course, it takes a teaching to arrive to that, and we have the whole system laid out in the Bhagavad Gita, which I'm going to get through as we spend our time together.
So the Hare Krishnas is really a misinterpretation of the Gita in many ways.
Yeah. For example, as it is, that's the popular version. Their thing is about worshipping Krishna consciousness. It's the same as in Christianity. If I follow the mandates, then I will go to heaven. So in other words, I project my mistake, my ignorance of separation, and I project that onto the Lord. Yeah, and they also do that with anthropomorphic God. They think it's a person. Because I think I'm a person, therefore I have no choice but to associate the same idea onto God. You see how how we constantly project? Yeah. So yes, it's halfway there.
Another quick question: if we all go through the 66 sessions, it's a meaningless question in a way, but why will some people, really get it and others won't? Is that karma? Is that a...
Okay, we talked about the three shantis at the beginning, and that is, the first is personal, not primed. Second is environmental issues. Someone can just sort of be busy and not come anymore. And the third one is universal forces. That is, it's just not your time yet. Now, what does that mean to say it's not your time yet? It means that there's more purifying of the mind. Yeah, that's the only reason.
Because you're saying that the system is well thought out, it's been out around for so many years, all the things...
And yet people still go for years and years.
Yeah, I'm wondering why, if it's such a, so to speak, foolproof system...
You can say it's karma.
Yeah.
It all depends. Like, for example, if we bring in E equals MC algebra to a 5-year-old child, is there any way they're going to understand when they don't even know how to multiply and divide? They know addition and subtraction. So that means what? We first have to teach them how to add and subtract, then multiply and divide, then go into maybe some geometry, then do some exponents, do some more division, more complicated formulas, and then maybe when they get into college, then they get a little degree into more advanced mathematics, and then they're qualified for quantum physics. So you can see everything has an order, and there is no skipping. So the answer to that question is, if it doesn't work, that means they still haven't gone to the division and subtraction. And for that reason, we start with karma yoga. That means you're not going to walk out wasting your time, because we give you how to live in a way that purifies the mind so that the knowledge can be understood. You see, that's why we first do karma yoga. Totally opposite the neos, right? They go straight from minus plus straight into what? Quantum physics. So we do what? We do very gentle until you're totally primed to get it, to understand it. And see, it's such a joke. There's actually nothing to get here, because as I said, you're already aware. So that should be the end of it. That should be the end of the search. And it just baffles how people still keep coming, even though we just told you that's all there is.
But also there's the contradiction that there's nothing that we can do to get it. It's not really up to us.
It's not up to you.
Even though you teach that it is, and sadhana, and we do the practice, all the things, the 66 sessions to get there, and then but no, there's none of that in a way.
There's none of that. Yeah, and Vedanta is a throwaway because even Vedanta is mithya.
Yeah.
It's duality.
Yeah.
So, but remember, Brahman is non-separate. That means mithya is non-separate from satya. So that's why this knowledge is just a pointer to what you already are.
Well, I think there's something within us that we know that, and we can even probably sense that when you say it's a throwaway, we're not like, oh, okay, this is, oh, there's contradictions. No, that doesn't work, so I'm going to leave. We all sort of, feel that the truth.
Yeah, that's it. Because it's inherent. We all know it. That's why I say, put your hand up who wants to get hurt. Yeah. No hands go up. So there's an inherent knowing about this. Yeah, that's why you still have the ability to tell if somebody's lying or not, or if I'm lying or not, because you will feel it. Yeah. Yeah, so all we're doing in Vedanta is telling you these eternal principles which are non-negatable. That's what knowledge means. You cannot negate the fact that you exist, can you?
And because we exist, and we are part of the existence, we are not separate from the existence. All there is the existence.
Yes, and you are that existence.
Correct, but we don't, that's the ultimate truth, but we don't think that, we don't realize
that's
because
right.
of all the things that have
That's
happened.
Right. And so there's no reason to feel guilty because anything that's born is born ignorant. So, but the good news is anything that's born can have its ignorance removed if you're shown the right teaching system. And the irony is there is actually no ignorance. Even that is just another idea. Because why? Do you know you're ignorant?
Oh, no.
Huh?
No.
But you're aware, I don't know. That's why you showed up.
Yes.
So that means what? Ignorance and knowledge also have nothing to do with you. Because you're aware of what you know and you're aware of what you don't know. That means even ignorance about not knowing who I am, even that depends on me, consciousness. So that means what? But we say, oh, I'm ignorant, and then we go and attend a class as if ignorance exists, making ignorance real. But it's only because of you saying I'm ignorant, that means what? You're prior to the ignorance and the knowledge of yourself. That's why I say it's such a joke, because we think we're pretending we're ignorant, but we're actually not.
And like you said in the class earlier, most of us in the world are trying to get, which implies that we aren't whole.
Yes.
So if we flip that switch in what we can give, that implies we are whole.
We are whole.
So in terms of knowledge, saying you're ignorant, implying that you're ignorant when you're not, you're aware, so there is no ignorance.
That's right.
Just, the process, the steps to...
Yeah, so that means until you can finally agree with that and come to terms with that and have no doubts about it, then you're free. Then you're free of the world. Because what is the world other than just thoughts, doubts, desires and fears? I need this, I need that for my completion.
So doubts is really the biggest thing, isn't it? Doubting our knowledge even.
Yeah.
We put trust in our ignorance.
Yeah, and the problem is that, nobody's entirely ignorant. It's a mixture of knowledge and ignorance. But we cannot tell apart what is knowledge and what is ignorance. That's the problem. That's why everyone has something to share, but in the stage of ignorance, they don't know if they're sharing the truth or if they're sharing their ignorance. Because to them, it's all the truth. Yeah. So that's why we make it very clear what is truth and what is ignorance, so you no longer confuse the two. And therefore you only focus on the eternal truth, the I am, which is changeless, never-ending, always here, always present of whatever's going on. And everything else is just everything else, mithya.
That's when people say, my truth is...
Oh, yeah,
that sort of thing.
I heard it so many times.
My truth.
That's your truth. This is my truth. So that's relative. That's still worldly affairs, But we're not talking relative. We're talking absolute truth.